Hello, everybody. How's it going? Everybody okay, I hope? Welcome to Thursday Night Minutes with Milo show, and welcome. So, if you're new to the channel, if you're old to the channel, if you're new to the world, you're old to this world, click the like, click the subscribe, get the notification bell turned on so that you'll know. Be reminded, be here on time. The Minutes with Milo show. That way you don't miss any of the fun, the knowledge that is the show. The broadcast. We are broadcasters here, you understand? Tonight, the way it was, whatever day this is, Thursday. So, if you're in the United States, I know potentially I have some viewers outside the United States, but if you're in the United States, maybe in wherever country it is that you're viewing this from, you may have experienced some time travel, a little shift in the space-time continuum. Well, let's say about an hour, right? And I like the little analogy, the little saying, the little rhyme, the little, I don't know, reminder. Spring ahead, fall back. In the spring, March, something, you jump ahead, you spring ahead an hour into daylight savings time. And I have a hard time remembering that. Hey, Robert, what's up? What time is it where you're at? So, you spring ahead into daylight savings time. There's Craig. And then you fall back into standard time. Standard daylight time. I don't know, just standard time, however you want to say it. So, that's easy to remember. Spring ahead, fall back. Spring ahead, fall back. I don't know, maybe tonight during our little online investigation, storytelling, whatever you want to call it, maybe we'll find out why it's always 2 a.m. But I haven't come across that. I mean, I haven't scoured the dungeons of the cockles and the bowels of everything. So I don't know why it's 2 a.m. It just is. It is what it is. And I hate that saying. Why do I have to do that? Just because it is what it is. So, I've heard stories, rumors, why does the United States spring ahead and fall back? This, that, or another thing. And so, one of them has always been, well, it was for the farmers. Because they had kids and they wanted to do work before school, after school. The nights times came quicker, the mornings came quicker, so they rotated the clock time a little bit to accommodate that sun rising and setting at actually different times throughout the year. So that when the kids before school, I don't know the story completely, but you supposedly had more kid helper time when they would change the clocks around. And that was for the farmers to get their crops in or get them to market or whatever it might be. And, standard time where I'm at, it's starting to get dark at like stupid 5:30, 5:15. It's getting twilight. So, but you get up and the sun's coming up. I'm guessing 6:30ish, maybe. Maybe, starting to peek up over the hills at, 5:45, 6ish. But, starting to really lighten up the sky, a little bit later. And then by 7, you're pretty much into dawn, pretty heavy into dawn. But that's what I'd heard. And through the research tonight, I was looking at it, and it was proposed long before it actually took effect, because people were, noticing, hey, I'm asleep when there's daylight. So, then I'm awake when it's nighttime. But World War One seems like the consensus is. Hold on a minute. I've got to take this call. Well, apparently these people did not want to talk to me, even though it was important that they call me and interrupt my show. Where was I? World War One is when this really, started to become something. Hey, we need to do this. So, through the magic of, time travel and geometry and physics, they decided that they could work better. It's better to have people working during daylight hours, and you would have some more free time at the end of the day, blah, blah, blah. And it would also save energy because while you were up and about working and doing your business, you wouldn't have to have lights on. That was part of the theory, because in World War One, everything was about, being conscious of how much energy was being used, because, the war effort needed all hands on deck. And so that's when it really became important, and important enough to actually take action on. So lots of reasons that weren't this, and you'll see a study here too. We'll talk about this. When you're going to school, if you're a elementary school kid or junior high kid, there's Clell. Hey, Clell. Depending on which daylight savings time or standard time, you could potentially be going out waiting for the bus in the dark, which could be dangerous. Just as a side note, and I'm sure they still use them, but every once in a while, if you go out through the county along the road, you'll see these little shacks, call them a shack, alongside the road. And a lot of times, those are for kids to wait on the bus in. So I remember seeing them like at the end of the hollow, whatever, at the end of the road out of the holler, because the kids would walk down their road, get to the main road, and then if it was raining or snowing or if it was cold, they could huddle in this little, almost like an outhouse with no door on it. Sometimes it was double wide, depending on how many kids lived up in the holler. So that's kind of a side note about safety. You're going to school, it's in the dark, you're waiting on the bus. That was supposedly one consideration that I'd heard, was that, you didn't want your kids going to wait on the bus in the in the dark. So if they're out there waiting on the bus and it's just about dawn, at least there's some daylight out there. People driving around, have a better chance of seeing kids waiting for the bus. So, is that true or not? Not really. It may have been one of the reasons, but was it a legitimate reason? Not according to one study that I came across while doing the research. So let's see what we've got. Let's do this. There's the list. Let me shrink me down to my little wee self. Right there. Maybe we got to go to the other side. Ruh-roh, Scooby. What happened? There it is. All right. So Robert says farmers wouldn't care. Daylight's daylight. Right. So here's kind of what I was thinking. And there's a little picture that I didn't fully understand when they actually, back when newspapers reported things that everybody needed to know, this little diagram was in the newspaper. So I guess in my mind, going to touch on what Robert was saying, if you stay on standard time, that's where we're at right now. So I have yet to move my watch to standard time, so it's still on daylight savings time. So right now, of course, it is 22:17, right? So that's 10:17 in daylight savings time. Farmer would be getting ready to go to bed, or if not already in bed, because he needs to get up at the crack of dawn. So that's fine if you were 100% going by the seasonal clock, going by the sun comes up, sun goes down clock. And I kind of where this is going is you could set your alarm. So let's just say that the rooster crows, the sun starts coming up. You need to be up out of bed eating breakfast so that when the sun's up, daylight's out, you can start your chores and start working the farm. So let's just say that was, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Let's just say it's 6 o'clock standard time. But as the sun rotates, the earth tilts, and you get into wintertime or you get into summertime, the sun changes. So then, you could, if you were a farmer, you would adjust your alarm clock, if you had one, to get up, if the sun was rising earlier or later, you would, adjust that accordingly, and then you go to bed earlier or later. And it wouldn't matter. You would just say, well, instead of getting up at 6, during the summertime, I need to get up at 6:30. So I'd have the same amount of hours of daylight to work with. And if that's all you did, fine. But, they would have to coincide with, maybe their kids are going to school. So they didn't care about daylight. They couldn't adjust the time they were going. So, farmers have roosters. Roosters are, I don't know, buddy. They're not that accurate. I don't have any, but my neighbor used to have some. And you'd hear that idiot. He'd be crowing at 3 o'clock in the morning. Dude, the sun wasn't coming up, Yeah, eventually it was getting around to it, but it wasn't coming up. So, the farmers could adjust their personal schedule to be, to line up with the daylight. But when they were working with other people that said, my boss says I open the mill to grain, to crush grain or whatever, or accept loads of grain or corn or silage, I open it at 7. And he doesn't care if the sun's up or down. So, the farmer there, he is. Yeah. They just, see, roosters to me, Clell says his neighbor's roosters crow all hours of the night too. I think the roosters crow to let hens know that they're welcome to come on over. We're having a good time. You know, there's a fun-loving rooster over here. Just come on over. And I think that's what he does. And he doesn't care if it's daylight or nighttime. He's just blaring it out there so the hens, he could call more hens to his flock. And so, yeah, they don't get you up. They get you up, but most of the time it's not when you want to be up. So that's when I guess they stepped in. It would be good for everybody to be on the same time frame. And we'll look at that here in a second. And I was really surprised that, you'd think all this stuff would have happened back, in the early parts of the United States when people started carrying, a pocket watch so that everybody would kind of know what time it was. Because a lot of people had wind-up clocks and things in their house. So, but if you're out in your horse and buggy, you didn't know what time it was. But I guess it really came down to governmental structure. When that became strong enough to really affect everybody with a a new law or whatever, then the government became stronger and bigger and stronger and bigger, and it said, "Hey, you little peons, this is what we're going to do with time. Federal government says it, and so it shall be." And so that wasn't, until the 1900s, basically, because of that pesky thing where the South decided they didn't want no part of that big government stuff. They thought they could do it better on their own. That didn't work out so well. So, then I guess they said, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And so everybody started playing under, federal guidelines. But let's look at that. So which one of these? This is from Time Magazine. What was the one? The history. Bureau of Statistics. Negative. That wasn't it. That's that time. Why do we have? You'd think I'd have these tabs organized, and I do until I open more tabs and more tabs. Okay. USA Facts. This is usafacts.org. Is it a government website? Is it trustworthy? I don't know. I don't vet my sources. I just give you the warning. This is a show, a talk show about ideas, about why is it like that, and it's not anything to do with reality. So, is it real? Man, it's on the internet. Some people believe everything on the internet. Is this from the government? I don't know. But it has some, some other collaboration from other websites. So let's look at that. Changing the clock twice a year has been, to get more daylight has been in place for more than 50 years. But debates in state legislature and Congress show that there's still some interest in stopping the process. Daylight savings time was originally implemented during World War I to help conserve fuel and power in the U.S. But the daylight saving procedures most people are now familiar with were established in 1966 and most recently changed in 2005. I opened this 2005 law. I don't know. I can't. I wish I had the mind and the ability to stay awake to read and make sense of some of this junk. One of the things I've thought about doing on my show is going through these terms of service that you either agree to or you don't get to play with the big boys on Google or Facebook or, Twitter or Chime or, OnlyFans, whatever it might be. because, you read those things and you think, I can't read all this mumbo jumbo. Man, my eyes cross. They start to grow heavy, you know, and it just, well, if you want to do it, you got to accept it because they won't say, you know, that you can otherwise. So you just click on it and you go on and you don't really know what you've done. I've thought about that would make a good show if I could just do it. If I could just read through it, highlight some of the areas that just don't make sense, the warning signs, the problems, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. I opened that 2005 law that they talk about here, and it just blows my mind. So, in 2022, the Senate passed the Sunshine Protection Act. We'll look at that. But uh, where were we? Okay, most recently changed in 25. The history of daylight savings time. Time zones in the U.S. began in the late 1800s to help railroad companies coordinate along time and to reduce the likelihood of trains crashing due to differences in how time was kept. Before this, there were over 144 local time zones in North America. 144. And, that doesn't mean that left to right, the United States was broken up into 144 zones. It might have been, Tennessee had 5 time zones. South Carolina had, 7.5 time zones. North Carolina had 3. So, Wisconsin may had 2. I guess each state, everything had their own time zone for whatever reason, whatever rhyme or reason they had for it. So there were 144 local time zones in North America. Let's see if that opens anything and shows us what they were. Before the establishment of time zones in 1883, there were more than 144 local times in North America. The resulting time differences between adjacent towns and cities were not that critical when it took days to travel from place to place. So that makes sense. If it's going to take you 3 days to go to town, then it doesn't matter what time it is when you get there. You just ask somebody, hey, dude, what time is it? So, with the with the onslaught of railroads, faster travel became possible across larger geographical areas, and the travelers could sometimes arrive at an earlier local time than when they departed. Back then, time travel. Due to this lack of time standardization, train scheduling provided difficult to coordinate, resulting in missed connections and collisions. As a result, the major railroad companies began to operate on a coordinated system of 4 time zones starting in 1883. So, like a lot of things in the United States, it was all based on, I'm going to say safety, but that's not true. Part of it was true, but it was all based on the powers that be. The big conglomerations that have the most power were the railroads back in the day. And the railroads could do no wrong. So they got to decide 4 time zones, probably laid out the hours, all that stuff. And, it's kind of like, not really, but similar to my show I did on why train tracks were, what were they? 4 feet and 8.5 inches apart. And it went back all the way to the chariot making days, how wide the wheels were then. And that's where the ruts were. And that's where all the covered wagons rode. And then the wagon builders became train builders, and that's how wide the trains were. The railroad needed it to keep time schedules, to make money, because they couldn't, if you're shipping cargo, passengers, everybody's got to be at a certain place at a certain time. It's all about the almighty dollar. So the railroads basically were at their mercy even now. Time zones were set by the railroad companies. Because of the development of standardized time, and it was transportation driven, the government coordinated time zone was handled by the transportation agencies. In 1918, the federal organization in charge of all railroad regulation, the Interstate Commerce Commission, the ICC, and they're still around today, was given the power to address coordination concerns. That year, 5 time zones were officially adopted in the United States, entering into World War I. The Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific, and Alaska zones, all of which are still in use today. However, the need for coordination among all transportation modes became increasingly important after World War II, when the Department of Transportation was created by Congress in 1966. See, 1966, to me, that doesn't seem that long ago, because I was alive in 1966. It was assigned the responsibility of regulating, fostering, and promoting widespread and uniform adoption and observation of standardized time within each time zone. Daylight savings time was enacted as an illegal requirement by the Uniform Time Act of 1966. So, daylight savings time was born in 1966, even though they'd been messing with this stuff for a long, long time. The history, 1918. There was a section in here where it went back. Let's see, 74. Nope, that wasn't the one. So there was a push by people in England to do it. There was a push by Ben Franklin to do it, and it never did happen because there wasn't, a great need. Nobody had the need to do it, and so it never got done. And when I was talking to you earlier about this little picture, this is what they put out in the paper. How the daylight savings law affects you after March 31st. March 16th, 1918, the Washington Herald had this image chronicling historic American newspaper. Anyway, that wasn't it. But how daylight savings law affects you after March 31st. So you see it starts at 12. This is old time, so this would be standard time, what we're in right now. So from 12 to 4 o'clock, it was nighttime. They posted 4 to 8 a.m. of 4 hours of wasted daylight. Buddy, I've been around a long time. I don't think I've ever seen the sun come up at 4 a.m. I've never seen the sun come up at 4 a.m. So then work started at 8 and ran till 5. So then from 5 to 7:30, 7:30 were your free light hours. That's, so you were at work, you came home, that was supposed to be your leisure time. And then at 7:30, the lights went out and it got dark. So in daylight savings time, they moved it back. So see, now the clock doesn't start till 1. Or they moved it up. I'm sorry. The clock doesn't start until 1. So they skip the 12 hour, they move it up to 1. So 1 to 5 now are nighttime hours instead of 12 to 4. So they have 3 hours of wasted time from 5 to 8. I still haven't seen the sun come up at 5 o'clock. I get up at 5 o'clock now, and I don't care what time of the year it is, buddy. It's Well, it's dark out there. Now, granted, it gets light quicker, but not really. I don't understand. Maybe in 1918 the sun was on a different schedule. Maybe hours were different in 1918. I don't know. See, they show 3 hours of wasted time, and then from 8 to 5 is your work day, and then look, you have 3 hours to 8:30, so you gain an extra hour on the end too, right? So that makes sense. You're springing ahead, but I don't know. I'm, that's what puzzles me about this whole thing is it's not getting daylight. Sun doesn't come up at 4 a.m. So the Standard Time Act was signed into law March 19th, 1918. So right here's the timeline. March the 15th, the Standard Time Act is passed by Congress, creating daylight savings time in the United States. March 19th, 4 days later, the Standard Time Act was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. March 31st, 1918, daylight savings time goes into effect in the United States for the first time. (1918) was the first time. Now, what did they change all those other times? Why did they change it? Let's see. Where did that go? Over here. So here we go. We're here at the 1918. The agency started the first instance of daylight savings time in the U.S. to help conserve fuel and power during World War I. The idea that with shifting time to get more daylight hours would reduce the need for lighting. After the war's conclusion, daylight savings time was abolished nationally, with some states continuing the practice. So, from 1918 until 1966, with the founding of the Department of Transportation led to the current version of daylight savings time with the passage of the Uniform Time Act of 1966. Current dates for when the U.S. springs forward: it's the second Sunday in March. You fall back the first Sunday of November. But see, from 1918 until 1966, it was just pretty much willy-nilly, seems like. It was all standard time. All right, so which states? So this is set nationally, and each state doesn't have apparently the legal authority to abolish it in each state, but the states have the ability to make exceptions. All right. So as of 2022, only Arizona and Hawaii have exempted themselves from the time change. They can't abolish it altogether. They can only exempt themselves because it's some kind of federal law. States are allowed to exempt themselves from daylight savings time, but cannot set their schedules to it permanently. So some people want it to be daylight savings time all the time and do away with standard. Some people want it to be standard time and do away with daylight savings time. Some people don't care. They just want one standard, for doing it. But I would like to see more hours in the evening. And of course, when you roll around into summer, and here again, it's a function of the sun. It's a function of the way the earth is facing and all those kind of things. Whether or not you have more or less daylight in the morning or in the evening. But the clock, where you put the clock in there, makes a big difference, because you go to work now and it's starting to get daylight, when you get to work, but you come home in the dark. And there is times when you go to work in the dark and come home in the dark. And so, that's no good. You can't get squat done. At least, in the summertime on daylight savings time, it's 9 o'clock and it's still daylight outside. And that's, it's a curse and a blessing all at the same time. So you get off at 6 p.m. I don't know where everybody gets off. I get off at 6. And there's 3 hours of daylight left. And Robert says it doesn't matter. 24 hours is 24 hours. Yeah, but let's do a little thing. I don't know. See, the days get shorter and the nights get longer, and the nights get shorter with the summer and winter solstice. So it's all about that. So what's the shortest day? Shortest day of the year. Okay, so the winter solstice. In the northern hemisphere, this is December solstice, usually the 21st or 22nd of December. And in the southern hemisphere, it is the June solstice, usually the 20th or 21st of June. Although winter solstice itself lasts only a moment, the term also refers to the day on which it occurs. All right, how long's a stupid day? Okay, so the shortest day lasts 7 hours and 49 minutes and 42 seconds in London. I don't give a rat's patootie about London. Oh my gosh. It still doesn't tell you the day, hours. See, this is what really ticks me off about search. They don't give you what you're asking for. They really don't. What is the shortest day? So maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Let's see. How many hours of sunshine in the shortest day? Oh my gosh, finally. See, why didn't you tell me I wasn't asking the right question? 7 hours and 14 minutes of daylight is marking the shortest day of the year, and that's in December. So we're shrinking, right now, we're shrinking down the number of hours of daylight. When we hit December 21st, we'll be expanding the number of hours of daylight. So it does matter in the summertime when, how many hours of sunshine in the longest day? It almost doubles. 11 in Hawaii, in Alaska. So on June 21st, the sun is up nearly 16 hours in Seattle, Washington. Wow. But only 13 hours and 45 minutes in Miami. So we're closer to Miami than Seattle. So 13 hours and 45 minutes. That's a function of the way the earth is. So go back to that picture. If I still have it up, I may have deleted it or gotten away from it. No, I think I closed it out. Where it showed the little sliding scale in the 1918 in newspaper. Anyway, so you're working 8 hours, and what they did was they kind of shifted the 8 hour period uh, by not saying instead of going to work at 8, spring ahead and spring go to work at 7. Instead of saying that, they just said, "Oh, we're going to move our clocks." So you still go to work at 8, but guess what? We're going to move our clocks ahead at this time so that 8, the new 8 was the old 7. That kind of stuff. But yeah, 13 hours and 45 minutes of daylight in the longest day. So I guess no matter how you slice, wintertime is shorter days. Summertime's longer days, which is good. I get it depends on where you think you want your time. You want your time, extra time in the morning? Do you want your time in the evening? And that would determine whether or not you were in favor of, you know, daylight savings time or if you were in favor of standard time. Because daylight savings time, correct me if I'm wrong, the sun goes down at 9 and you're in daylight savings time, which springs ahead. If you stayed standard all the time, then the uh, sun would be going down at 8 p.m. But it would come up an hour early. So I'm not a morning person. I would just soon have my extra hour at night. Meaning, I like the daylight savings time because you spring ahead. You get up earlier, but when you get home, you have up until 9 o'clock. I mean, I could go home, come home and mow the yard, do all that kind of stuff, all that summer work after work. I would not get up at 5 a.m., go out and mow the yard before I went to work because I had an extra hour of daylight in the morning. I would sleep through that daylight, just like they were talking about, in Ben Franklin times, early times. They were saying, well, I was asleep when the sun's up. So I wouldn't get up early to mow my yard. Now I'll stay up late at night to mow it and go to bed. So going back over to here, where is that? So they can't permanently change it one way or the other, but they can exempt themselves from participating. So they're exempt from participating in daylight savings time, but cannot set their schedules to it permanently. 17 states have passed laws to observe permanent daylight savings time, while Kentucky and Ohio have passed resolutions supporting it. If Congress were to change federal law regarding daylight savings time, these laws and resolutions could come into effect. Since 2018, 19 states have passed laws or resolutions asking to move to permanent daylight savings time. So Arizona opted out of daylight savings time in 1968. That was only 2 years after it was implemented on a national level in 1966. The Navajo Nation in northeast Arizona observes daylight savings time. Die 4K when I get home. Huh? Dark. Okay. So Robert, everybody was on the comments talking about it is, pretty much daylight and dark when they leave and get home right now. So, I'm leaving the house, at 7ish and it's getting daylight. Tennessee legislation enacted in 2019, but it doesn't say to do what. I assume to stay on permanent daylight savings time. Hawaii did not adopt daylight savings time after the passage of the Uniform Time Act. Well, how do they get away with not doing it? Right? All these other states are wanting to stay on that would just be a mess. It would just be a mess, because I don't guess it's super hard, but it's already annoying enough to say, well, I need to call somebody, a business or something in California where a lot of car parts, let's just say, are made, and it's 9 o'clock, and I'm up, I want to get my day started, and I want to call these people. I know nobody calls anymore, you can email, but you know what I'm saying. You gotta think, well, no, they're 3 hours behind me. So it's 6 a.m. there. There's no going to be anybody to answer the phone. That means I got to call during lunch. So, yep. U.S. Senate unanimously passed the Sunshine Protection Act in 2022, which would move the nation to permanent daylight savings time. The bill has not received a vote in the House of Representatives yet. So it's just sitting there. It's been sitting there for a year or 2 years. Okay, so here are the studies. So they were, safety was one of the things they touted about the daylight savings time. In 1974, Transportation Department daylight savings time study found no conclusive difference in energy use, crime, travel times, or trading during the time shift. A separate report on whether the practice increased traffic fatalities involving school children was inconclusive. Which link is that? Close that one. That's the same link. Oh, what are you doing? Oh my gosh. Here we go. So this was a report updated September 30th, 2020 about these studies that they had done. And it talks about, it's got a pretty good history in here. Safety. All right. So here, after the DOT, Department of Transportation, submitted the report to Congress in 1975, Congress directed the National Bureau of Standards to conduct a technical evaluation of the Department of Transportation study and to deliver a report to Congress. In its report, NBS, the National Bureau of Standards, found no significant energy savings or differences in traffic fatalities. Although statistically significant evidence was found of increased fatalities among school-aged children in the mornings during the 4-month period January through April in 1974. So, as compared to the same time in 1973. They go on down here. The increase cannot be simply interpreted as daylight savings time effect in view of the many other factors that influence traffic fatalities. When the months of January through April are considered individually, there's no statistical significant difference between 73 and 74 with respect to school-aged children, fatal accidents in the morning for the months of March and April. So basically, they were saying, well, if you go to school and it's daylight, it would be safer for the children. And so this thing says that even though there was some noticed difference in the a month or 2 months, there was no proof that it was detrimental or a benefit either way, I guess, to that. Same thing, Energy Department study showed consumption dropped by 0.02%. Yeah. The study also showed no measurable impact on vehicle gas consumption. I don't understand why they even thought that that might be a thing. Because people are driving to work in the dark or they're driving to work in the daylight. They're still driving to work. So the consumption of fuel should still be the same because the same number of people are driving the same number of miles, whether it's light or dark. Robert says almost half of the countries in the world observe daylight savings. Yeah, one of these, when I was doing the research, it talked about some of the other countries were adopted it. Germany or someplace adopted it even before the United States. Once Germany did it, there was a couple of other countries that followed suit, and they started adopting it. And this was way before the United States had done it. One goal of daylight savings time is to have more days with sunlight during working hours. The amount of daylight an area gets differs based on its location, as we learned before. Miami, longest day, was 13 hours. Washington was like 16 hours. It says here northern cities tend to get more dark days or days with less than 10 hours of daylight in a year. The furthest west a city is in the time zone, the later it sunrises and sunsets will be. Yeah, that's why they moved it 3 hours. Shifting to permanent daylight savings time would affect some cities more than others. Hello. Bangor, Maine would have 98 more sunrises after 7 a.m. if it were on permanent daylight savings time. So it would be 98 more days where the sun didn't come up until after 7 a.m. But Washington, D.C., which is further west and lower, of course that doesn't matter, would get 44 more sunrises after 7 a.m. I don't see, they're all tied up about sunrises and the sunsets. It's all about, am I up when the sun gets up? I'm not going to get up and do stuff in the morning, so, to me it doesn't care if I drive to work with the lights on or the lights off. It's after work when I can get more work done at my house outside that it makes a difference. And I notice in the summertime I'm a lot more motivated to come home and do things even on the inside, as opposed to I come home, it's dark, and if I want to go outside and do anything, I got to put a headlamp on and turn the lights on outside the house or carry a flashlight. It just makes it such a big old pain in the butt. I would not go out when I come home at dark, turn the lights on the lawnmower, put a headlamp on, and go out and mow the yard. I know Craig, he doesn't mow his yard. He stopped mowing his yard like, what, a month ago, 3 weeks ago? Maybe, that's probably a month ago. I mowed mine, hopefully for the last time, last weekend. And I was mowing much up the leaves and stuff. I could go out and mow part of my grass right now if I wanted to, but I wouldn't come home and put my lawnmower's got headlights on it. I mean, they're not the best in the world, but if it's pitch black, they work pretty good to see like 20 feet in front of you, and you put a headlamp on, a good headlamp on your head, look around, and you could mow the yard in the dark, but I'm not going to come home after work and mow the yard in the dark. Just not going to happen. I'm not motivated to do it. Not motivated to do it. So, why do we make the change? Because The railroads wanted it that way. There it is, the plain and simple fact of it. The railroads wanted it that way. No, the railroads wanted time zones, which I can understand. The whole world, the whole United States was revolving around moving freight, moving people, moving information quicker from point A to point B via a railroad, which was the first thing they ever had that, could travel long distances without getting tired, nonstop if it wanted to, pretty much, you know what I mean? And so it was very, very important. And it also made, like it said, you could leave Detroit and go some other place in Illinois, and you might leave Detroit at 9 a.m. and get in Illinois at 8 a.m. There was no rhyme or reason. So, can't fight the railroad. Well, nowadays, the railroad isn't, even though they're still, I'm sure, quite powerful, they're not like they used to be because they're not the only kid on the block anymore, So, they don't get that, lobbying power like they used to have. Maybe I'm wrong, but it'd be the first time. Not. So it was designed to try to save energy and designed to be safe and for productivity, and people feel better. I mean, it is hard to work when it's sunny outside, even if it's cold. You look outside and, man, that sure is pretty, even though it's cold outside. You said, you don't want to be at work. But, I've worked many a seconds and many a midnights thinking, geez, man, I just can't wait till the sun comes up. Just running around in the dark all the time. And, it's just crazy working outside in the dark. Working inside, you may not notice a difference. Especially, right, Clell, if you work in a place where there's no windows. You don't care if it's snowing, you don't care if it's raining, it's not daylight, it's not dark, it's not sunny, it's not rainy. You're in a daggone tomb, basically. No windows. Nothing to see what's going on outside. That's a problem. Vitamin D. I know what, I gotta buy some more vitamin D supplement. I ran out. Like a coal mine, yeah. Pitch black all the time. Same temperature though. Maybe time a little more humid. So it's all about productivity. And somebody somewhere did a study saying, hey, we can save money, we can save energy, we can save daylight, we can do this, we can do that. Whether it was farmers, whether it was, the railroad, whether it was the war machine, whether it was safety for kids, they did it. And we've been technically permanently doing it since 1966, even though they were doing it in 1918 and before that, then they just, it was like, hey, the war's over, let's get back to standard time. And then in 1966, they brought it back from the dead. Well, that's been long enough talking about the good, the bad, the indifferent of daylight savings time or standard time. I don't know. I've lived with it all my life, so I've grown really accustomed to it. It would just be really weird to be on, daylight savings time all the time. That's one of the reasons I haven't changed my watch. Plus, the other reason is it's just my buttons are messed up and it's really hard to get it to do. It takes 5 minutes to change the hour, and then the minutes are all messed up. So, if you've listened, watched to the show, and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you have subscribed, leave me a comment. Visit us when we're live. Let us know what you think. Craig, good night. Sleep tight. Let's see. I'm going to look and see right here how many subscribers I've got. Still, I'm at 102 subscribers. By the way, Clell, a rooster that crows too early should be eaten or beaten. If he's not your rooster, get out there and, chase him around. So 102 subscribers. 164 videos. They like my clock. That's a cool clock, ain't it? I didn't make that. Did I steal it? No, I borrowed it. It's still right there. I haven't done anything with it. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave me a comment. I'm trying to get my podcasts up on Amazon. I don't know. I made an account. I uploaded a podcast the other day. So I don't know. I'll have to look at it and see. Anyway, so I appreciate everybody watching, making their comments, checking it out. And Monday, 9 o'clock, maybe the topic might be, well, it involves dynamite. It involves the beach. And it happened in the 70s. That's all I want to tell you. And it's just kind of a, why did they ever think that was a good idea kind of show? So, dynamite, the beach, in the 70s, when things were a lot looser, a lot more lax, and personal safety was not as great a risk as it is now. So that's probably Monday. I was going to do it tonight, but I started thinking about, we're talking about daylight savings time because it just happened. So that's what happened tonight. Daylight savings time, standard time, falling back. Thanks, everybody. Tune in Monday. Bye.